The moment my daughter-in-law took the wooden spoon from my hand and said, "You are not allowed to cook in this kitchen anymore," I realized I had become a guest in the life I built. The soup was still simmering. Steam curled gently from the pot, carrying the smell of garlic, rosemary, and slow-cooked tomatoes through the kitchen I had designed 27 years earlier. My kitchen. The one with the wide oak counters my husband built by hand. The one where every birthday cake, every Christmas dinner, every scraped knee and broken heart in our family had been comforted with warm bread and soup. I stood there holding half a chopped onion, while Vanessa looked at me as though I were a problem that needed managing. "You make everything too old-fashioned," she said, setting the spoon down on the counter with sharp little clicks. "Customers want modern food now, and honestly, you confuse the staff." Customers. Staff. I looked past her through the open doorway into the dining room of Bellamy's, the restaurant everyone in town praised as my son's success story. People laughed over wine glasses. Servers hurried between tables. Soft jazz floated through the lights. And not one person in that room knew I had once worked 16-hour days inside these walls while pregnant with my son. Not one person knew the original menu was written in my handwriting. Not one person knew the mortgage had been paid with money I earned after my husband died. Vanessa crossed her arms. "We talked about this already, Elena." No, she had talked. I had listened. My son, Marcus, appeared near the freezer door then, loosening his tie as though he had arrived just in time to avoid discomfort. "What's going on?" he asked. Vanessa sighed dramatically. "Your mother keeps interfering in the kitchen again." Interfering. The word landed harder than it should have. I stared at Marcus, waiting for the same thing mothers always wait for when someone hurts them in front of their child. Recognition. Defense. Memory. Anything. Instead, he rubbed his forehead tiredly and said, "Mom, maybe it's better if you just relax tonight." Relax. That word had become a cage disguised as kindness. Relax upstairs. Relax at home. Relax while younger people handle things. Relax while your life slowly gets rewritten by people who arrived at the end of the story and believed they created it. Vanessa reached for the burner and turned the flame off beneath my soup. Just like that. A recipe I had perfected over 30 years died with a small click. "You can watch service from the dining room if you want," she said gently, the way people speak to elderly strangers who move too slowly in grocery stores. Something inside me became very quiet, not angry, not shattered, clear. I removed my apron carefully and folded it once over my arm. The kitchen suddenly sounded different to me. Not like home, like employment, like a place where I needed permission. Marcus checked his phone while Vanessa barked instructions at a line cook half her age. Neither of them noticed I was looking around one last time. The copper pans hanging above the stove. The brick oven. The scar on the counter where Marcus dropped a tray at 16 and cried because he thought I would yell. I never yelled. That may have been my mistake. Without another word, I walked through the back hallway, climbed the narrow stairs to the office above the restaurant, and opened the old metal filing cabinet no one touched anymore. Inside sat a thin, black folder. I pulled it out slowly. At the top of the first page, printed clearly beneath the state seal, were the words, "Owner of record, Elena Bellamy, sole proprietor." I smiled then, not because I wanted revenge, because for the first time in years, I remembered something everyone else had forgotten. The restaurant they controlled had never belonged to them. And downstairs, while Vanessa plated desserts in my kitchen, she still had no idea whose building she was standing in. That night, I did not go home with Marcus and Vanessa. Instead, I checked into a small hotel 2 streets away from the riverfront district where Bellamy's glowed every evening beneath strings of golden lights. The receptionist asked if I was visiting town. I almost laughed. "I suppose I am," I said quietly. The room was simple but peaceful. No clattering dishes. No tense silences at dinner. No Vanessa correcting the way I folded napkins in a house I paid the down payment for. I sat on the edge of the bed with the black folder resting beside me. For a long time, I simply looked at it. Funny how paper waits patiently while people rewrite history. I opened the folder carefully. There it was. The deed to the building, business registration forms, tax filings, insurance documents. Every line carried my signature. After my husband died, I had poured everything into Bellamy's. My savings, my grief, my energy, my youth. Marcus had been only 22 then. Charming, ambitious, reckless with money but full of dreams. I had wanted him to inherit something solid instead of sorrow. So I built it for him. Not gave. Built. There is a difference. The restaurant became successful slowly, painfully. I cooked. I cleaned. I negotiated with suppliers. I stood in freezing kitchens at 5 a.m. kneading dough because payroll came before comfort. Years later, when Marcus married Vanessa, she entered Bellamy's like someone walking into a movie halfway through and assuming she understood the plot. She redesigned menus, changed uniforms, started calling the restaurant a brand, and little by little, my role disappeared. First from the kitchen, then from decisions, then from conversations, until eventually I became decorative. A smiling older woman customers thought was part of the ambiance. I poured myself hotel coffee and stared out at the river lights. Then I picked up my phone and called someone I had not spoken to in nearly 6 years, Arthur Levin. He had been Bellamy's accountant since the beginning. He answered on the 4th ring. "Elena?" His voice carried immediate concern. "It's late. Is everything all right?" "No," I said honestly, "but I think it's about to be." There was silence. Then, "What happened?" I told him everything, not dramatically, not emotionally, just facts. Vanessa banned me from my own kitchen. Marcus allowed it. I left. Arthur listened without interrupting. Finally, he asked quietly, "The building is still entirely in your name, correct?" "Yes." "And the restaurant license?" "Mine." Another pause. Then he exhaled slowly. "They really never checked, did they?" "No," I replied. "They got comfortable." Arthur made a thoughtful sound. "Well, comfort makes people careless." I leaned back against the headboard. What happens if I decide I no longer want Bellamy's operating under my ownership? His answer came immediately. "Then Bellamy's stops operating." The room became very still. Downstairs, somewhere beyond the hotel walls, traffic moved through the city. People laughed outside bars. A siren echoed far away. Life continued, but something had shifted. Arthur cleared his throat gently. "If you want, I can pull every financial record tomorrow morning. Full review, quietly." "Yes," I said. "And Elena?" "Yes, you should prepare yourself. Businesses reveal character faster than families do when money becomes uncertain." I closed my eyes. "I think," I whispered. I already saw their character tonight. The next morning began with rain. Soft at first, then steady. I sat beside the hotel window, watching water blur the city, while Arthur emailed document after document to my inbox. Profit statements, loans, vendor debts. By noon, my hands had stopped trembling. Because the truth was worse than disrespect. Marcus and Vanessa were drowning. The restaurant looked successful because I owned the building outright. No rent, no mortgage pressure, no landlord asking questions. Without that protection, Bellamy's would have collapsed years earlier. Vanessa's expensive renovations, Marcus's failed side investments, private loans, late supplier payments, and beneath all of it, one devastating reality. Neither of them actually owned the business they bragged about online every day. At 1:17 p.m., my phone rang. "Marcus," I answered calmly. "Mom, where are you?" "At lunch." "You just left yesterday. Vanessa thinks you're upset." Upset. Such a small word for exile. "I am thinking," I corrected. He sighed heavily. "You know how Vanessa gets. She didn't mean it personally." She removed my hands from my own stove. Silence. Then, "She's trying to modernize things." "By erasing me?" "That's not fair." I looked down at the ownership papers spread across the bed. "No," I said quietly. "What's unfair is mistaking someone's sacrifice for your entitlement." His tone sharpened slightly. "So, what exactly are you saying?" I took a slow breath. "I'm saying Bellamy's will close temporarily beginning next week." Complete silence, then a laugh, a nervous one. "Mom, you can't make that decision yourself?" "Yes," I replied calmly. "I can." Another silence, longer this time. "What do you mean?" "I mean, the building, licenses, insurance, and operating authority remain under my ownership. Arthur will explain the details to you this afternoon." The panic arrived immediately. "Wait, what?" "You should have read the paperwork before treating me like hired help." "Mom?" "For years I accepted becoming smaller inside my own life. That ends now." His breathing became uneven. "You're overreacting." "No," I said softly. I finally reacted the correct amount. Then I hung up. The next 3 weeks tore through Bellamy's like a silent storm. Not dramatic, not loud, legal. Arthur moved carefully, methodically. Operating permissions were suspended, pending ownership restructuring. Vendor accounts froze. Insurance renewals stalled. Suddenly, Marcus and Vanessa discovered how many doors only opened because my name stood quietly behind them. The staff panicked first. Then suppliers. Then investors Marcus had boasted to at parties began asking uncomfortable questions. Vanessa called me 12 times the first day alone. I answered none of them. But the message that finally reached me came from someone unexpected. "Lena, one of the line cooks. Miss Bellamy, is it true you own everything?" I stared at the text for a long moment before replying. "Yes." 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, "I always wondered why the recipes tasted different when you were there." I smiled for the first time in days, because food remembers who loves it. By the second week, articles began appearing online. "Beloved local restaurant faces ownership dispute." Marcus looked exhausted in every photograph. Vanessa stopped posting glamorous dining pictures entirely. And then came the meeting. Arthur arranged it in a quiet conference room above the bank downtown. Marcus arrived first. Vanessa followed seconds later, wearing white like innocence could be coordinated. Neither looked prepared for what truth does to people. I sat at the far end of the table, with my folder closed neatly in front of me. Marcus spoke immediately. "Mom, this has gone too far." "No," I replied calmly. It finally reached the truth. Vanessa leaned forward. "We built that restaurant." I looked directly at her. "You decorated success you inherited." Her face tightened instantly. "That's insulting." "So is banning a chef from her own kitchen." Marcus rubbed his eyes. "Okay, fine. Mistakes were made. Can we please stop this before everything falls apart?" Arthur slid several papers across the table. "It already has," he said quietly. Marcus scanned them quickly, then paled. "What is this?" "Debt exposure," Arthur replied. "Without Elena's ownership protections, Bellamy's has been operating at a significant deficit." Vanessa grabbed the pages. Her makeup could not hide the fear spreading across her face. That can't be right. Arthur folded his hands. It is. I watched them carefully then. Not with cruelty, with clarity. For years they had mistaken appearance for stability, confidence for competence. Marcus looked up at me finally. You knew? I suspected? And you said nothing? You stopped listening years ago? Vanessa's voice cracked slightly. So, what happens now? I answered honestly. That depends on whether you understand the difference between gratitude and ownership. The room fell silent. Outside the conference windows, rain slid slowly down the glass. Marcus looked smaller suddenly, not like a businessman, like the frightened boy who once dropped a tray in my kitchen and waited for me to shout. I thought, he began weakly, I thought eventually it would just become ours. There, I said softly, is the problem. Arthur closed the folder gently. Elena has already received purchase inquiries for the property.